yeah, freak out. Yeah, I'm looking right into the video scope, And this is Macho Man, #1 Macho Man impersonator, past, present, future, yeah. And I'm here to tell you, you are watching 49er Minded with Bashar. Yeah, the cream of the crop. Dig it?
49er Minded. It's not just a thought process, but a way of life. 49er Minded. 49er Minded. Can't shake it. It's 49er mind that I got. It's 49er shine that I got. My psyche's on another Frisco. Super Bowl, don't sit slow, cause here we go with a super show. A red and gold session. About a red and gold obsession. With some well-controlled expressions. Let's talk about that win that we got. Who should have been in the spot? That's how it's been in the spot. Let's roll that back, all that crack, all that straight fumble sack. Or just dial it on up if you wanna talk smack. It don't matter what the storyline, as long as the story aligns with a 49er mind. 49er minded. It's not just a thought process, 49er minded, but a way of life. The Shark. 49er minded. Way of life. 49er minded.
What is up, everybody? It's been a while. Welcome to 49er Minded, where we get into the minds of 49er fans. Really excited to bring my guest on, so let's bring him on. Is none other than Ant from 49ers Cutback. I've been on your channel before. I've been wanting to collab with you. It's been a while since we talked, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Finally getting into the mindset, I think, of the offseason. The loss to the Eagles was a little tough, I think, on everyone, and I took advantage of the time and kind of stepped away, and now I'm getting back involved and excited to be on your show. I dug the intro. I was getting into that vibe in a little bit, and so yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to talking 49ers with you, one of the real good 49er people out there, and so I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Hey, we really appreciate it. Likewise, man. I started watching you and Alex right around the time you guys first started, and I'm a big fan of you guys. You guys are really excellent with the 49er knowledge and just the breakdowns, and especially both of you have coaching experience and just good guys in general, man. So, and obviously it's always, I love bringing people on who I can vibe with, and just, we both share the same love and passion for the 49ers, and plenty of people I bring on, it's even better when they have more knowledge than I do, because I can learn off of them, and then we can always share our experiences. So it's just great to have people on like you. And let's let everybody know how the whole story with Ant began, where you grew up, how you became a 49er fan. How did it all start?
Yeah, so I pretty much was born into this thing. I'm third generation 49er fan. My grandfather, then my father, then me. I've grown up in Lodi, California. It's a little small suburb south of Sacramento, and this is kind of where I grew up. I went to high school and everything, and then shortly after high school, I got into coaching. I had an opportunity to get into it, and I really enjoyed it. I worked my way up through the ranks, coaching every single position from assistant line coach to every position, going to every clinic I could possibly go to, until eventually I was not just an offensive coordinator, but then a head coach in the high school level. Really enjoyed it. Loved working with the kids. Retired from coaching. After the 2018 season, the COVID kind of hit, and the school I was coaching at actually got sold, and it became a charter school. So I stepped away, took advantage of the opportunity, and came up with doing the podcast, and I've been doing that ever since. But yeah, I've sat in clinics with so many coaches. There are so many more intelligent people than I could ever possibly be out there that know football, that you could soak in all their knowledge and never understand fully football. Football is crazy that way.
Totally get what you're saying, man. Without a doubt. I just want to tell everybody right now, I thought the chat room was empty until I clicked over to my other browser. I saw that there's a whole bunch of people that chat for some weird reason on StreamYard where we run the streams from. It's not generating the live chat for some weird reason. Hopefully that changes throughout the broadcast. I don't know. I might have to leave and come back. I don't know if I want to do that, but I definitely see you guys in the chat. And actually, I'll just click over to my other browser and just shout a few people out. We got Warowski here is on the first guy that I see in there. I see Bobby T, see Raphael, see Joey Mahoney, see Laura, I see Melissa. So I definitely see you guys. It's going to be kind of hard to follow up because, okay, Good thing is all the chats showed up on my browser where I run the stream. So now I can actually pop up chats on the screen. And Bash, not Bash, but Joey Mahoney was saying, Bash, you got to ask Ann about Danny Gray. He's a big Danny Gray fan. Okay. We'll get into that. Yeah, Laura says she loves the intro. So cool. It's good to see that I have the chats on here and just flashing up some chats from my fellow subscribers and fellow Niner fans out there. We got about, so Bobby T, I don't know if you're a new guy, but welcome to the channel. Thank you. Really appreciate it. And there's plenty of stuff to talk about, man. Let's so obviously you said you talked about how you became a Niner fan and your whole coaching background. Do you remember what the first jersey that you owned was?
It was a Joe Montana. Joe Montana was my guy. Absolutely loved everything about Joe, and I had a number 16 jersey, and it was definitely my favorite jersey that I've ever owned. It did end up getting copped and stolen, believe it or not, at a camp that I went to. So I don't have it anymore, but yeah, that was my favorite one.
Now you use that in past tense. You said Joe Montana was my guy. Is there something that has changed down the road or something?
Not really. I mean, I know sometimes Joe, and I mean, I think all the players do. They kind of say things that make you like think twice, like, wait, what are they talking about? But no, Joe's still my guy. I mean, Joe's my favorite quarterback, my favorite player of all time. And so now I roll with him. I just meant past tense because, we got some new guys now. And I always like having guys that I really enjoy watching with every current team. And there's some really good players on the 49ers roster. And a lot of guys you can root for, like George Kittle and Fred Warner. I mean, those guys are easy to be fans of. Trent Williams, I mean, ridiculously good dudes and good players. So, it's easy to kind of go that way with those guys now.
Yeah, I was just poking a little fun at the whole Joe Montana thing because, every now and then he just says certain things to the media, and I'm like, he did not just say that, did he? But it's like, okay, whatever. You know what, Joe, just say whatever the hell you want. I don't have to agree with it, but hey, everything you did as a player was amazing, and we love it. We got Roberto Davidson here. What's up, dude? He says, Ant and Bashar, great combo. Everyone, please like and subscribe to both these great content creators. I really, really appreciate the love. And for those of you guys who are not subscribed to 49ers Cutback, Ant is the main host of that channel. I do have the information for that channel in the description box of this video. Go ahead and click on it, and you can also follow him on Twitter. I put his Twitter, and it's always good to have excellent, content creators on here that we can talk and have fun talking Niner football. So now Joey says we got to buy Ant a Joe Montana jersey. Definitely had his fair. Oh, you had your jersey stolen too. I never had a jersey stolen. The only thing I had stolen 49er wise from me, or the only thing I can remember stolen from me in general that pissed me off. Remember when I was in high school, I had a Roger Craig T-shirt, and for PE class, we'd get dressed and wear our PE clothes or whatever. And I remember, I guess I just had my Roger Craig jersey in my locker, and I didn't lock it up. I should have locked it up, but somebody stole my Roger Craig shirt. So go ahead. Yeah. And actually at the time, Roger Craig wasn't even a 49er anymore. He was on the Raiders at the time, but I was still pissed off. I was just pissed off. It's a Niners shirt. It was my shirt. And hey, somebody took it from me. And when you got your Montana jersey stolen, was that at UOP where they had the training camps there over in Stockton?
It wasn't, but yeah, I used to go to the training camps at UOP. I went down there every single year. It was a lot of fun, and I used to get the VIP passes and go down there. Luckily, my aunt worked at a bank, and we got a hookup, so I used to go down there and talk to the players and everything like that. Met Terrell Owens, which was a lot of fun. He wasn't the nicest guy, but hey, it's T.O., right? I mean, the dude was ridiculously good, but got to see all those guys up close and personal. It was a lot of fun then. And then I've, been going to Santa Clara since. It's a lot of fun. It's a little bit different vibe, but it's overall training camp. I don't know. Did you ever go to the one in Rockland? Did you ever get to go out there, Bashar?
You know what? When I was a little kid, I lived in Citrus Heights, which is pretty close to Rockland. And I was hearing about the 49ers as a little kid, but nobody in my family watched football. So I didn't become a football fan until later in life. So I wish at that point in time I was a football fan. I could have watched Joe Montana and Dwight Clark practice and, Jerry Rice down the road. But I remember my best friend who I was carpooling with, his mom was actually a student at Sierra College in Rockland. And she'd say that she saw Joe Montana and all those other players all the time. So I wish I had checked those out. The only training camps that I started going to were once Mike Singletary took over. That was when I started going to the training camps, and that's when Candlesticks Park obviously was still our stadium back then. But the training camps were always held in Santa Clara at that point in time. So basically it was the site where the current stadium is now, and where they still hold the current practices, obviously to the public. And so I started going then when Crabtree was a rookie and all that, and had fun. I didn't really meet too many players though, because I just didn't want to. I'm just not a fan of long lines and fighting through people and stuff like that. You always have to push and shove and stand in super long lines. So like the only players that I really met at training camp were what was Josh Johnson out of all people. When he was on the team during the Harbaugh era, there was Jason Slowey, if you got that name rings a bell. So they were big time headline guys. Actually, all the Niner players I pretty much met were back when I lived in San Jose and got to play hoops with Patrick Willis once. I met Isaac Sopowaga once at a Bank of America ATM, and I would just randomly, go out and run into players from time to time. It's been a while though. But yeah, it's always cool. I never really had a super bad experience meeting a player. Every now and then you get that certain vibe from a certain player. Like you mentioned the whole T.O. thing. I'm not sure what he did and said that, or he didn't come off as a nice guy. But if you run into a celebrity or a big time athlete, every now and then you're just going to get a certain vibe that, they don't want to be bothered or not the friendliest of people. But for the most part, it's been a pretty good experience in terms of running into 49er players. And I haven't once ran into Jed York, and I didn't run into him, but it was like it was a meeting basically at the camp facility at the 49ers headquarters when they were lobbying to get the new stadium built. And Jed York and Keita Turner were there. And there was this whole thing where they were trying to rally up the troops in the Bay Area to get votes. So I talked to Jed York for like a minute or so. And, despite all the people that hate him or whatever, he was actually a really, really nice guy. So I can't complain about that. And Keita Turner was awesome too. Met Ronnie Lott. I still got to meet Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice is like, out of everybody, in terms of I want to meet as a 49er player, he's like, high on my list, without a doubt.
Yeah, Jerry's great. I've never met Jerry personally. I went to camps and saw him pretty close, but I've never actually talked to him. He would be somebody I would love to talk to as well. But you're right. Most of the players, almost pretty much all of them, are just really good guys. A lot of them, especially on the current roster, took a ton of time signing autographs. Just a lot of really good dudes that play for the 49ers. That's what I always appreciate, is you can be always happy with your roster and your team and your coaches, because they just are good people and go about it the right way. It's easy to be proud of the 49ers.
That's true. Do you have any memories of the first 49er game you attended? Or if you were too young, maybe the first game that you remember attending?
So the first game that sticks out to me was I actually went to watch the New York Giants versus the San Francisco 49ers. I think it was a Monday night game, but it's the Bryant Young injury game. And Bryant Young gets hurt. And I remember hearing the screams and yells, not just from his teammates, but from him as well. That was the one that stood out. I was sitting, a Candlestick on the second level, and it was a pretty intense. But that was my first experience with the 49ers football game. And it was kind of for a young guy like me, I think I was like in middle school. It was kind of an intense moment and kind of dramatic. But I mean, it was Candlestick. Candlestick had just a different feel than any stadium I've ever been in.
Yeah, Candlestick was a lot of fun. We went to some good games out there. As far as going to a game where it was a creepy feeling for me, I was at the game where Trey Lance got hurt. So just imagine, dude, my head was down like the majority of the game after that happened. I know we were waiting and stuff, and everyone was cheering at points in times during the game because we were doing good things. It was really, really hard for me to get back into the fan spirit being at that game. Roberto Davis says, living in the Rockland Granite Bay area, heard some pretty sketchy stories about Joe. Oh, wow. Okay. I often seen it with women he wasn't married to. Oh boy, that's funny. I do live out in the Rockland area now, actually. But they no longer have the training camps there anymore. And I definitely ran into people that grew up here, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, man, I met Jerry Rice at Taco Bell," and they have all kinds of crazy stories. And Brandon Ayuk actually went to junior college at Sierra College, where they used to hold the training camps. So there's a little bit of a 49er connection out in this area, and I definitely see way more Niner fans out here than Raiders fans, which is always good. So that's cool, man. So you went to Niner games early on as a kid. Sounds like your dad's probably a Niner fan. I take it, right?
Yeah, huge Niner fan. So that's how I kind of got, that's how I got into it. My grandfather, my dad, huge Niner fan. So I was pretty much the whole family. So we were just all in on Niners.
That's awesome, man. I didn't get to experience that early on in life. I kind of had to my brother and I, God rest his soul, had to kind of make everybody Niner fans, but we did a good job of it. So that's cool. So do you have any, I know you mentioned the T.O. thing. When you met him, he said things were kind of shaky. I guess he wasn't really the nicest guy, but do you have any really good stories in terms of meeting Niner players?
I think I'm trying to remember the exact name of the player. It was way back at UOP, but we had one of the running backs. His first name was Jonas. I don't remember the last name for whatever reason. I have his autograph, so I'd have to look it up. But the guy was just a really good guy, and he stood there and he talked to us. I think it was for a good hour at training camp. Just talked it up, and he had all the cool stories about the different players and stuff. They were coming out to get him, like, "Hey, you got to go in," and he's like, "Nah," he's still just sitting there talking. I think that was probably my coolest experience meeting a player. I have worked with other players that weren't 49ers because I went to like camps and stuff. And I used to go to Webster Slaughter's football camp in Stockton at Delta College. And I got to meet a couple of guys. I got to meet J.J. Burton. He used to play for Kansas City back when Montana went there. And then I got to meet Michael Dean Perry, who was, the refrigerator's brother. And I got to learn from them. And it was a lot of really cool experiences being on the field and being around them. And I think that was probably my best experience with NFL players, was actually at that camp with those players. Junior Seau was there as well. It was a really cool camp. Webster Slaughter, just a really great guy who gave back to the community. And those were probably my favorite moments with NFL players.
Yeah, Webster Slaughter. I remember him on the Cleveland Browns. He was like an All-Pro, or definitely a Pro Bowl wide receiver. That name definitely sticks out as one of those catchy names. He was a good player. And Michael Perry, what was it? Michael Dean Perry, you said?
Yeah.
The D lineman, the refrigerator's brother. He was a beast, man. He was actually, even though Refrigerator was famous early on, Michael Dean Perry was a dominant D tackle, man. He was a lot of fun to watch with the Cleveland Browns. I do remember J.J. Burton as well, because he used to be on the Kansas City Chiefs, and every now and then he'd get a nice little touchdown against the Raiders, and I kind of had fun watching. That was before Montana had joined the Chiefs, though. So that's cool. I had no idea you got to work at such a camp, and totally forgot that Webster Slaughter had his roots in the area as well. That's cool, man.
Yeah, it was super cool. I mean, those are the experiences I hope that all kids, and young adults get to experience, is going out and meeting these guys and seeing guys that do it at the highest level possible and the work ethic, but just that they're normal people too, and then they can really take time and interact with kids. And I've talked to J.J. Burton since. I kind of hit him up on Twitter a little bit and thanked him for what he did at the camp and everything. And he was super cool about it. So just really good dudes. And that's what a lot of the NFL is, really good guys.
Definitely. So let's get to this question. It's an off-topic question, but I always throw it at people because I'm a big pizza connoisseur. I got a pizza oven in my backyard, and every time I got a guest on, the pizza topic just always has to come up. And to me, nothing goes better with football than pizza. So what's your preference in terms of style of pizza? A lot of people like a New York style pizza, like a thin crust, or Chicago style deep dish, or maybe your chain style, your round table, your Papa John's. Like, what do you go for when it comes to pizza, and what kind of toppings do you prefer?
Yeah, I love a combination. I'm always a huge combination guy. I like all the different stuff. And we have a local place called Tony's, and it's more kind of New York style pizza, and I absolutely love it. That's my go-to. Everything they put on it, it tastes really good. We got a couple of good pizza places here. I'm not usually a chain pizza person. I like kind of the smaller pizza places. So here it's usually Tony's or Rick's, and New York style is usually the way I go. I always love it. I always enjoy it.
Actually, Joey Mahoney, the chat's one of the few guys in the chat that's had my pizza before, so he can attest to it. I love New York pizza. It's a big thing of mine. I watched before when I started get into making pizzas, and when I first got my pizza oven, watched probably like 20 videos on how to make New York pizza, and followed extensively what kind of flour they use and all that. So, and that's cool that you found a little spot that emulates the New York style, and the mom and pop places to me are the best to go. And for me, like a chain's like a last resort. If a chain has like a good deal, sure. If I don't have pizza dough at home and there's a great special going on, sure, I'll go for the cheapo deal, the chain. But my preference is, my first preference is to make it. Other than that, support the local businesses, the mom and pop places. You can't go wrong with them. And pizza is always a fun little thing to talk about. And there's plenty of crazy 49ers stuff to talk about. I mean, we have free agency is going to start up pretty soon. We have a ton of people on this roster that are free agents, and the list is so long and extensive. And is there anybody on this team, or do you have like a handful of players on this team that you want to retain as free agents?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of players you would like, and I think there's dominoes. So if one player leaves in free agency, then you're really inclined to bring somebody else back. We had 27 free agents. Of course, Tabor Pepper signed an extension today. So he's going to be on the team for the next 3 years. He got $1.5 million. So that takes one away. They got 26 other ones. I think they have to make a decision about who's going to play opposite of Nick Bosa. I know Mike McGlinchey is the big one everyone wants to talk about, but Samson Ebukam, Charles Omenihu are both going to be free agents. I'm not sure either one of them should actually be the starter opposite of Bosa. I think they might want to go a different route. I don't think Drake Jackson's ready yet. I think it's going to be another year before he is. I think he's not able to play 3-down football because he can't stop the run as well as he can pass rush. I think eventually he'll get there, but it might be one more year before he gets into his own. So I think that's the biggest decision. And if they're not able to get one of the free agent defensive ends that's available to put opposite of Bosa, then who is it? Ebukam or Charles Omenihu? Because you can't afford to pay both. So I think that's one of the big decisions. And then I think that Mike McGlinchey is going to get priced out. I think he's going to get $15+ million. He's going to leave. And then they have to decide if they want to go Colton McKivitz or, we've heard a lot of people saying it's going to be McGarry from Atlanta now, that maybe that's the way the 49ers are going to go. They are preparing to pay a bunch of people. They're probably going to turn Christian McCaffrey's contract, into a signing bonus, lower his base so they can get more money to spend. They'll probably do the same with Charvarius Ward. And there's other options like Fred Warner as well. They're going to be spenders, but I think the biggest decision has got to be who's going to be opposite of Nick Bosa, because that defensive line just wasn't up to the level that we've seen in the past.
You know what? It seemed like in the first half of the season, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I felt like there was a much more collective pass rush. And it seemed like especially when we were getting more towards like the Brock Purdy, era, once he was taken over, kind of seemed like more so around then, like the collective pass rush was just dying off. And it just seemed like Bosa and nobody else. And it was pretty disheartening. And for me, I had some pretty high hopes for Drake Jackson. Now, when we drafted him, I liked the pick, and I heard a lot of excellent things about him in training camp. And early on in the season, I thought he looked pretty good. And then lo and behold, he just tailed off for whatever reason and just didn't seem like the same guy. And then they weren't activating him. And obviously, we all know about the whole thing where he had a high rate of batting down passes, which was nice. But he doesn't necessarily look like the speed rusher that I thought he'd be either. And I don't know. What do you think his strength is as a pass rusher right now?
It's his bend. I mean, the guy can bend the corner. When you hear bend, they're talking about the hip flexibility, being able to get down and get around the corner. He can do that at a better rate than Bosa as far as athletic ability. The problem is putting it all together. And I think USC did him a disservice. They played him off ball for some of the time. So he didn't fully develop his hands, the pass rush techniques. And then they had him lose weight as well. So this is a guy that had to gain weight to come into the NFL. I don't think he got to where his body is supposed to be. I think that's what Kyle Shanahan was talking about with him keeping his strength and keeping his weight throughout the season. That's something he's going to have to do. And then I think that's part of the reason he doesn't play the run as well, setting the edge, is he's just not equipped to do so yet. Samson Ebukam picked it up faster than I anticipated. I'm hoping Drake Jackson will start to trend that way this year. I always thought this year he was going to be a situational pass rusher, just hoping that he's able to develop, because if you can get Jackson, whose first step needs to get a little bit better, but if it can, he's got the ability to be the long-term solution opposite of Bosa. I just think we're probably a year away.
Yeah, I do remember that. I think it was early on in training camp. They were showing things in the preseason that he had a really, really nice bend, and that you definitely refreshed my memory on that one. I definitely recall how USC had him change his body type, had him drop weight and gain weight. I think they kept moving him around in different positions. And he always wants the stability with these football players. And hopefully, obviously with the 49ers, it looks like they're pretty rigid in staying with the 4-3 scheme and keeping everybody as 4-3 D ends. Fangio came in to take over the defense. Things may have been a little bit more 3-4-ish, and I guess Shanahan wasn't really having that. So I believe as far as free agents go in the pass rush, I know Zadarius Smith is a name that stands out. Is there anybody else that you think that the 49ers may try to get?
I mean, there's a couple of guys, that are going to be out there. The question is, how much money are you going to be willing to spend? If you're going to go out there and get, somebody like Zadarius Smith, if he gets released, you're probably going to pay a lot of money. This is a guy that last year was supposed to go, to one team and then switched because he saw how much money was out there on the open market after Von Miller went to Buffalo. So I think if you're going to get one of those guys, it's all about money. So then it comes down to, can you find a veteran guy who's, maybe at the end of his career that's looking to win a championship? I'm not sure that guy's out there that's a speed rush type guy. This is a little bit of a tougher one than most years. There's usually a guy that stands out. So I'm kind of waiting to see who gets released and which players end up being salary cap casualties. And then I think we'll get a better idea where the 49ers go. And I don't think if somebody else doesn't get released, we might end up seeing, one of those guys come back. So I don't know. I'll also look up right now and just see if there's anyone out there that's available, on the active list that they could go after.
Joey Mahoney from the chat did drop a pretty decent name. A little older in age, but looks like he's still kind of productive. Is Justin Houston? Do you think that's a possibility?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's a good one because Justin Houston's kind of fits that build that I'm looking for, right? An older player that maybe in search of a Super Bowl. So they're going to be a cheaper option, but can still do it. I think when the 49ers defense is the most successful is when they have a speed rush opposite of Bosa. I know it was a small glimpse, but when D Ford was playing opposite of Bosa, you saw the pocket absolutely collapse. And then when you had Armstead and Buckner in the middle, they were able to collapse it. That's why they got so many sacks with that front four, because they had to worry about D Ford's, ultimate speed. That's what I think they're looking for. Houston's not going to be that speed threat. Maybe he was, 3, 4, 5 years ago. But I do think he has so many talented moves and his hands are so good that he would be an upgrade from what we've been using so far.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting way to look at it. And, there's somebody brought Marcus Davenport. There you go. 49ers throwback said that. I forgot that he was a free agent. Yeah, he might command a lot of money too. Money plays a huge part in it. I was thinking about the draft too, something like.
Yeah, I think that's one of the concerns.
Mm-hmm. I've been doing a ton of these mock drafts. It's almost been addictive to me. It's like an addictive video game. Like I'll do one. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna do one mock draft. Next thing I know, I'm sitting at my computer for like half an hour just doing like 5 or 6 in a row. But like one name that I kept pumping out because I kept using the same website. Maybe that's a bad thing, but I was using PFF. I saw Isaiah McGuire's name pop up a lot when we were picking around, let's say the 100th pick or 101st pick. What was it, 99th pick and 101 pick actually, but right around that bubble, at least PFF had Isaiah McGuire from Missouri. I'm not sure if you had your eye on him or you looked at him, but it looks like something that's kind of available when we're going to be picking it around that time.
Yeah, I looked at a couple of those guys, that were going to be available there, and I looked at him a little bit. I haven't looked at McGuire a whole lot. I think he's one of those guys that I think he's going to be there when the 49ers pick, so I think that's a really good one to look at. I just, when it comes to the draft, I'll be honest, I haven't looked at as many players as like people are getting into. I've just started kind of my breakdown. So I got to get more into the draft, but he's definitely one that I've seen that I'm interested in looking at because the 49ers are probably going to take at least one edge rusher and maybe even more. When you really think about it, there's probably going to be options for them at the edge rush position, and they're probably going to take them. If they have 3 third-round picks, the likelihood of them taking one of those guys, at the end of the 3rd round is probably going to be big. And there could be some guys, some big-time players that are available at that spot. And I'm hoping that the 49ers can get one because, like Harrison at Ohio State or guys like that, they need somebody that can make a big-time play. I just don't know if they're going to be able to get a guy that can start day one, without trading up. And I don't know. Do you think they'll trade up Bashar into the 2nd round or even into the early 3rd round to draft an edge rusher?
It would be nice to see them trade up. A lot of people are thinking they need to trade up to get a tackle or an edge, perhaps, but I don't know. What capital do we really have to make such trades anymore? After the whole CMC trade, and they'd have to find a little clever way of doing it. There was a name that I was trying to pull up his name on my phone. He's got one of those tricky names. He's either Tongan or Samoan. He's from San Jose State. He's an edge. I'm not sure if you heard about him, but he's another guy whose name kept popping up when I kept doing mock drafts in those 3rd round picks that we had. And I wasn't sure if you were familiar with him. He's an edge from San Jose State. That's why. Let's go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard of him yet. I was going through the list of the different guys, and I think I'm kind of been in the 3rd round range, guys, and it looks like he's going to be a little bit farther than that, so I haven't seen him come up on my board yet. Okay, I see him right here. It's like, I'm going to get that first name wrong, but I think the last name is Fehoko. Is that right?
There you go. That's him.
Yeah. So, he's somebody that I haven't watched yet, but I definitely should. He's right in our backyard. Somebody I should check out. Yeah, the thing is with the draft, right? There's so many players. Like the 49ers brought in somebody for a workout that I've never even heard of already. So I was already checking him out today. There's going to be tons of players that are going to kind of move up and down these boards, especially when we come out of the combine. But there's so many guys to look at that when you do the mock drafts, that's what I like about the mock drafts. It gets you familiar with names. So that way you can kind of see where they land, and then you could get familiar with them by going and watching their film. What I like to do is I like to watch. I know a lot of people are against highlights, but I like to watch a highlight because my thought is if they don't impress me in the 2-3 minute highlight, how are they going to impress me by watching all that film, right? If their greatest plays don't impress you, they're not going to impress you when you put on an entire film. So I watch the highlight. If they impress me, I will definitely go check out more film. But I haven't got to him yet, but I'm kind of looking forward to it. And I always love breaking down the edge rushers. It's one of my favorite positions.
Oh yeah, it's a great position to scout. It's a lot of fun for me to scout as well. And I'm totally with you. I'm totally with you because I'm not the type of guy that just sits there and watches college football all game all year long. I don't. And a lot of people do, and it's cool if they do, but I just don't have the time to do it. But it's a nice way of cheating. And when it comes to scouting, I kind of call it reverse scouting sometimes. And just sit there and watch highlight. And you're right though, because those are their best plays, and if they don't jump out at you, then the highlights is like, do you really see this guy as a guy who could impact this team at a certain need that we have? So it's very interesting to look at it that way. What up, No Border Sports? That's Ryan from No Border Sports. What's up, dude? We collab on 49ers First Takes channel on the NWO podcast. He's runs that channel with Waruna, really good guy, big time Niner fan. And Mahoney was saying that Ebukam made $6 million and had 5 sacks last year. Yeah, not really that impressive, but Ebukam's just a guy. He's a good player, but like for what we're paying him, it's just not enough. That's how I look at it. It's always how I saw it with Ebukam. And go ahead.
I was going to say I'm with you 100% on Ebukam. The production seems more like a role player than a starting edge player.
Great way of putting it, especially with them. And I know that when we picked him up, they were ranting and raving about, oh, well, he's got all this great speed and he's going to be able to stop certain mobile quarterbacks. And it doesn't, we still from time to time have issues with certain mobile quarterbacks. So it's not like he's really helped in that regard, in my opinion. What up, Raphael says, what's up, Brian? Okay, good to have. Oh, there's a player that we'll get to this in a minute. Because Joey was telling me about this player. We'll talk about it now, actually. Jonathan Mingo is a wide receiver coming out. I believe he's from Ohio State. Are you familiar with this guy? This guy, he keeps ranting and raving, saying that we could possibly.
I am. Okay, so here's what's funny. So me and Joseph are on the same page, and I believe he's from Ole Miss. Is where Jonathan Mingo is from. And this is one of my favorite wide receivers in the entire draft. So I'm kind of surprised he pulled this out already. But yeah, I've been watching Jonathan Mingo. He's big. He's 6'2". He's 225 pounds. He's going to run about a 4.5 40. He reminds me a lot of Debo as far as, body build and structure. He's a big dude, except he's taller. So he carries his weight a little bit different, but he's smooth. He catches the ball without slowing up. He gets vertical really quick. He breaks, those little tackles. He's a red zone threat. So he's somebody that I really like. And I do think he fits a mold of what Kyle Shanahan looks for. So I do think he fits the scheme. And we're going to have, let's be honest, Jawan Jennings is going to be here this season. He's an exclusive rights free agent. Next year, he'll be a restricted free agent. So they're going to have him for 2 more years. But if you can pick up a guy like Jonathan Mingo later in this draft, I think he's probably going to be a third round pick, late 2, early 3, maybe even slide to where the 49ers are. We'll see. I think he could be a huge advantage for them because I think he could fill a role for this team. And, like they said, A.J. Brown, that's the kind of size he looks like. So it's possible. I love Mingo. So that was funny that got brought up because, yeah, he's one of my guys so far that I've watched from the wide receiver room.
Yeah, I didn't know about him until Joey told me about it a few weeks ago. And Joey did this whole thing last year to me where he told me about Danny Green, got me on the Danny Green hype train. And then before that, he got me on the Brandon Ayuk hype train way before we drafted Ayuk. So he's got a little eye for wide receivers, man. Maybe you should join our little join the scouting team for the 49ers and help them scout their wide receivers. Yeah. Hey, like aside from like the pass rushers, I think wide receiver is like a very fun position to scout as well. And what up, John V? John V's here for the Locker Room Rant. Good to have you on here. He's helped me do my post-game shows a lot. He's a great dude. Well, repping the Niners big time all the way out in Ohio, out of all places.
Very
But
nice.
hey, he's not too far from Youngstown, Ohio, so he sees the Eddie DeBartolo headquarters with the 49ers symbol out there and all that. So yeah, man. But it's like cool because you mentioned that Jonathan Mingo is kind of like a bigger Debo, and then Joey said looks like AJ Brown. I always thought of AJ Brown as like a bigger Debo with more polished route running. It's kind of how I looked at it. Do you see Mingo as being a better route runner per se than Debo right now?
I think they're pretty similar. I think as far as route running, I would say AJ Brown was a better route runner than both of them coming out of college. I don't think that's really been close. I think where Mingo's closer to AJ Brown is as far as I think he could develop into still having that vertical threat. I think sometimes Debo's not a vertical threat the same way AJ Brown is, but I think Mingo, for whatever reason, can still separate on vertical routes, which kind of separates him from Debo. Where Debo separates himself from the other two is all the other things he can do with the ball, right? He can take a screen and take it to the house. I mean, AJ can do that to a point, but not to the level. He's not that good of a runner with the ball in his hands compared to Debo Samuel. So Debo gets them both after the catch. But I think where Mingo and AJ are the same is they still have that vertical ability to press it downfield. And I don't think the 49ers really have a big receiver, 6'2" guy that can press vertical. Juwan Jennings definitely isn't that guy.
Yeah, and it's good that you mentioned Jennings too, because I was going to mention him about how he's a free agent, but obviously he did some good things. I like Jennings a lot, but I definitely think it'd just be nicer, throwing a guy like Mingo in the mix or somebody similar in the draft. I mean, and we drafted Danny Gray last year, and we didn't even really use him. What was your take on that whole so let's go back when we drafted Danny Gray? What were you thinking, and what were you thinking during the season when he wasn't being used? What was going through your mind?
Yeah, so Danny Gray was a guy I was really huge on. The first time I saw him was early on in the draft process last year. Everyone was saying he was a 6th round pick, and I saw him and I said, this guy is a 3rd round pick. I was really excited about Danny Gray. The speed jumped off the screen, the way he was able to catch the football without losing speed, which we know is important in Kyle Shanahan's scheme. He could do that as well. And then he gave you the vertical threat, which I thought was huge for Trey Lance because Trey needed to be able to get the ball vertically. Ayuk can do that, but that's not like his go-to flavor. And I think Kyle's been looking for that guy. I think what happened to Danny Gray was, I know a lot of people say the Trey injury hurt Danny Gray. I think what hurt Danny Gray is he's a rookie in Kyle Shanahan's scheme, and Kyle wants these guys to run specific routes, break off at certain points, and he really wants them to run these routes super hard. Ayuk talked about it. They basically beat these legs down until they're able to handle these quick cuts and do the things that Kyle wants. Debo had some problems with Kyle his rookie year. Brandon Ayuk did as well. Juwan Jennings didn't even make the active roster his rookie season. So I think that it took a year for Danny Gray, but I expect him to be a bigger part of the offense in year 2. And I think his speed will be on display, but I don't think he's just going to be on verticals. I think also catching the ball on crossing routes and some of those screen game plays too. Brandon Ayuk's been playing over 75% of the snaps. I wouldn't be surprised to see that come down a little bit with the emergence of Danny Gray.
Yeah. At one point towards the end of the season, we even ran Danny Gray on a jet sweep. And I was like, okay, cool. Finally, I was hoping they were going to do those type of plays early in the season, but it took them a while. I don't know. What up, Steven Soprimo? He says, plus Willis is willing blocking. I think he's talking about Danny Gray not being a willing blocker. I'm not sure what he means by that, but yeah, I think some people were questioning Danny Gray's blocking, if I'm not mistaken. Ant?
Yeah, they were. And that's always a problem with, they have the no block, no rock, and that's one of the things the wide receiver room, really is important to them. And I think Danny Gray, just like all rookies, it might have been willing. He just wasn't good at it either. Sometimes these guys just don't have the technique. Stock blocking, especially blocking corners and safeties in the open field. And Kyle Shanahan asked them to block linebackers sometimes as well. Those aren't easy blocks to make. And when you don't make those blocks, you leave other players hung out to dry. And I think it's obvious that was one of Danny Gray's problems because they brought up Willie Snead to handle blocking plays, such as the Ray McLeod touchdown. It was Snead in there, not Danny Gray.
And Snead's a veteran, so usually those type of veterans can kind of pull those things off better than like a deep threat speedster like Danny Gray, so to speak. Do you see this team draft another running back? And if so, in the 3rd round? a lot of the 49er fans are fearing that we drafted a running back in the 3rd round.
I don't think it'll be the 3rd round, but I would not be surprised to see them taking a running back. They have an abundance of picks, right? You have 11 picks. At some point, you look at your board and you take the best overall player. And if one of those guys is a running back, you do it because every single year the 49ers have had an injury in training camp or before the season starts in the running back room. So even though it looks dead set right now, you've got 4 really good running backs. Elijah Mitchell has proven that he's been hurt throughout his career. TDP got hurt in his rookie season. So I think you just want to make sure, so you do draft somebody. What's the worst thing that happens? You take a late round running back and you stick them on your practice squad. They learn your system, and then if you need them, you bring them up. To me, it just makes sense to continue to draft running backs. And if you don't need them, move on from them.
Yeah, great point. Let me see what's up to Niner Sickness Podcast. Beto, another guy who's repping in the 209, says hello to all the faithful. Great dude that I've collabed with many times. Just one of the really good Niner podcasters out there. Great to have you in the chat. Yeah, so the running back's another fun position. Bringing in CMC was just, I was actually live doing my show, had Lawrence on here, and we were just talking away. And actually it was to the point where we stopped doing football because we had him on for a long period of time, and I had all these plans to talk to him about pro wrestling at the end of the show because he was a big wrestling guy, and I'm big on wrestling, old school wrestling nostalgia. Hence my Macho Man intro. I don't really watch the current stuff, but we start this whole wrestling conversation. Then my boy, really good friend of mine, was in the chat. 49er Tone drops the news. Whoa, CMC just got traded to the 49ers. And I was like, whoa, really? Like, I didn't even know what to think when I was doing the thing. First thing that popped in my head was, wow, we probably gave up the whole house for this guy. And, then when I found out the picks, I was like, okay, that's not too bad. And now that you look at it, when you're saying that we got 11 picks in this upcoming draft, like, who cares what we gave up for CMC, really? I mean, the impact that he brought up to this team was just it elevated us to a completely different level. I was all for it. What were you thinking about the whole CMC edition?
Yeah, I loved it. I think at first I was in a little bit of shock like you were, even though I had created a thumbnail. I was kind of thinking it was a possibility. So I created a thumbnail and I went live shortly after the announcement. But I texted a couple of people like, hey, is this true? Like, Christian McCaffrey's really a 49er. And then once I saw the compensation, and I think a lot of people were concerned because of the amount of draft capital we gave up. But now when you're looking at this draft, it's not as deep and not as good as potentially last year's draft was. So those draft picks may not mean as much, but really it wouldn't matter. Christian McCaffrey proved himself to be an absolute superstar. He fits Kyle Shanahan's system to a T, and I think he's going to take it to the next level next year because he'll actually understand all the verbiage, all the plays, all the formation changes, and then now you're going to get him in there with a healthy Debo, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle. To me, this thing is going to be nasty and dirty, and he's going to get better and better because he even talked about the zone scheme for the 49ers being different in what the responsibilities and things that he's asked to do are compared to any other zone scheme he's been in, which means it just takes time. And once he gets it down, I think he's going to be really, really hard to stop. And his numbers were already borderline offensive player of the year type numbers.
Yes, sir. I mean, had he played a full season with the Niner, in my opinion, he was MVP candidate type material. And that was the impact that he brought to this team. What up, Panama Queen? She's here. She says, what's up, Bash? Good to have you here, Panama Queen, repping the Niners over in the Jersey area. Not too far from Philly, actually. She's always sticking it to Eagles fans out there, and I don't blame her because the Eagles fans are jerks. So I don't know. Steve was saying Kyle's getting fired. What are you talking about, man? I don't know about that. It's funny how there's this contingency of Niner fans that wanted Kyle to get fired, and I don't even want to get into that conversation. But yeah, we got a really nice running back room. But like you mentioned, like having a guy like Elijah Mitchell, who a lot of Niner fans were really hyped up about, and especially coming back right before the playoffs, and lo and behold, he gets hurt again. It's disheartening to see a guy of that talent, that caliber. But yeah, we can barely ever use him. It's almost like the Raheem Mostert syndrome. So again, it looks like we're probably going to draft a running back. Have you heard of Deuce Vaughn by any chance for Kansas State? That's a name that a lot of Niner fans have thrown out there.
I just started seeing it being thrown out there. So I haven't broke down any running backs yet. I'll be honest. I did go down the wide receiver hole for whatever reason. You know how it is. You get started on one guy and then you just kind of go with it. So that I kind of went that direction. I did some edge, but I haven't got into running backs. That's somebody I'm looking forward to watching because I've heard so much about him already. I am looking forward to breaking down running backs, but because of the positional need, I don't know if that's as high on my list. I started getting into a little bit of the offensive line as well. So we'll see. I'm really going to start kicking into high gear of draft once we get through free agency, but I've been trying to do some preliminary stuff, but I'll make sure to check out Vaughn as part of my running back group.
So when we get closer to the draft, last year I did a ton of mock draft shows where I had people on doing mock drafts. So kind of putting you on the spot, but I'd be more than happy to have you on for one of those type of shows.
Of course. Yeah. I'd love to jump on and talk the draft with you. So just let me know when and we'll work it out and make sure I can get on. I do have a busy April, but I will make it work for you. So
Okay,
April, I have
okay,
some personal life things, but I'll make it happen.
okay. We won't do it on April Fools. Okay, so
Oh, there you go. Thank you.
yeah, it'll be cool, man. I'd be honored to have you on. It'd be a lot of fun. There's a lot of names thrown out there as far as like the fourth round and fifth round. Deuce Vaughn, I believe, might fall into the fourth round. Just to give you a little sneak peek about him, he's a lot of people are kind of likening him to a Darren Sproles type. He's not. I mean, he's maybe 185 pounds soaking wet, but super explosive out of the backfield. An excellent receiver out of the backfield as well. He's not going to block anybody. That's the thing. So that's the one thing that tells me that he probably doesn't. He's probably not going to be drafted by Kyle Shanahan. That's one thing that's definitely a red flag. You could say, Kyle Shanahan wants his guys to block, and I don't really see this little dude blocking at all. But he's a ton of fun to watch. Like you mentioned, the highlights. You put on the highlight reel, you're going to be glued because he's just explosive, and you can totally see him running certain types of things in our scheme, and it'll be a lot of fun. But there's tons of other running backs to get. I'm not even sure what position this draft is really strong at. I read one place, I could be wrong, read one place that it could be a defensive back type strong draft. But if you know better than me, go ahead and tell me.
I'll tell you one place that's interesting. I don't know if people are talking about it. This draft seems strong to me from some of the tape that I've watched is tight end. To me, tight ends is pretty strong in this draft. And I'm not saying at the top end, but I'm talking as far as depth throughout the entire draft. I think the 49ers could pick up someone that could potentially help, behind George Kittle. You have Tyler Kroft. He's a free agent. Ross Dwelly's a free agent. Charlie Warner hasn't really developed as a pass catcher. So you either need to address it in free agency. Could they do that with like a Robert Tonyan or somebody like that? Yeah, they could. Or would they just go the draft route? And my guess is they're probably going to go the draft route and draft at least one tight end. I've been saying this for 2 years, so I'm not holding my breath because every year I tell them to draft a tight end, they don't.
Yeah, this is definitely a year I want to draft a tight end. It was the depth behind Kittle. I mean, I know, shout out to Graham Cohn, not knocking him by any stretch of the imagination, but I know he hyped up Dwelly for quite some time. And at the end of the day, we're just not getting the production out of Dwelly. We're just not. I mean, he may do certain things good receiving wise. He might have good hands, but if we're not getting the yards and touchdowns from the guy, I definitely say we got to go a different route. Philly Sports Talk Podcast is here. What's up, dude? Collab with this guy before, big time Eagles fan. Good to have him here. Good dude. What up, Warowski? He's here. A former YouTuber, great Niner fan. He's been on the show a few times. Says, get a tight end that can block. Get a tight end that can block and catch. How about that? Actually, it's kind of funny that you say that can block because there is a tight end that I do kind of have the Niners on my eyes. Because I've been, like I said, I've been addicted to these mock drafts. So his name came up a whole lot with Zach Kuntz from Old Dominion. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's not a blocker. That's the thing, though. He's not a blocker. But I do cherish blocking because I'm a 4-hour offensive lineman. But what I do like about him is that freaking the guy is 6'8". He can move with and without the ball in his hand. Just huge target in the red zone. And from what I saw, it looked like he could run routes and make plays. And it would be nice to have that type of playmaker behind Kittle. I don't know what you think, but
yeah, I mean, I think it is. I think if you're gonna roll with Charlie Warner, I think one of the things you can do if you're rolling with Charlie Warner, then you can roll with a different pass catching type tight end. I think part of the reason the 49ers went with Tyler Kroft last year was they are looking for a balanced tight end. So they're looking for a guy that when he's out there, you're under the belief that he can either block or he can pass. That's one of the things he can catch. You got that with George Kittle, but with Charlie Warner, you don't, right? He's just a blocker. With Ross Dwelly, he's just a pass catcher. I think they need a guy that has that ability to do both. So that way their play action is more dynamic. That's why they went to Kroft. And I know Kroft was later in years, and that's why he wasn't as good as he was early on in his career, which he was exciting. I think they're looking for that. I just don't know if they're going to be able, to find that guy in the draft. I think there's a couple of guys here and there. Like I said, there's a couple guys in free agency too. And I seen someone bringing up players in chat. I didn't quite catch who it was. But also the Evan Ingram's out there. He's a pass catcher. If you're looking for a pass catcher, probably going to get a pretty good amount of money. But the one that keeps sticking out to me is Robert Tonyan. And I think because he's so close to George Kittle, he had never really had a big explosive season after he had the injury. You tie him with George Kittle, I think that those two guys together could be pretty nasty.
Yeah, and come to think of it, George Kittle's a guy who runs a tight end university, right? So it makes
Yeah,
perfect
he
sense
does.
that he has ties with all these other tight ends around the league, and definitely it just would be a really nice addition to this team if we could boost that position, boost the depth of that position, and say for example Kittle goes down, then what you do? What do you do? You know what I mean? You gotta have better depth at that position. Remember when we
Oh
had
yeah, exactly.
when we had Jordan Reed, and it was like, oh wow, cool, we finally got a nice guy to pair with Kittle, and then boom, the guy kept getting hurt, and it sucked. We got David McNiner is here. What's up, David McNiner? Good to have you here. Just all the goats in the chats in the show. Hey, I just want to say I appreciate all you chatters out there. You guys make the show happen. Without you, the chatters, the viewers, there wouldn't be a show. So really important to have you guys here. And Tommy Huxley said Croft is soft. Everybody was pissed off about Croft being against Reddick. I know they gave him a lot of shit for that on that one play.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Everyone's gonna remember the bad play, or the tough play. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where formationally Kyle Shanahan did everything he was supposed to do. George Kittle, Tyler Croft, all them space, Hassan Reddick out far enough that you believe you're going to have time to run the play action and get the pass off. Couple of things, that happen in it. Purdy drifts a little bit, and then he kind of pats the ball and doesn't throw the ball on time. That gives Reddick enough time to get there. I don't think Croft believed he had to get more of a block than he got, because Deebo Samuel's coming around on a fake. And I think they thought that was going to get his attention and slow him up, and it didn't. So schematically, they thought he was going to react one way. He didn't. But now that's all we're going to remember Tyler Croft for, is for that, and not the fact that he was actually a pretty decent player for us as a backup. He's probably been the best number 2 tight end we've had in a little while.
Yeah, and I heard, according to a scouting report before we had signed him, that he's actually known as a pretty damn good blocker. So it is what it is. And from what I heard after the fact with Hassan Reddick was that I don't know. I'm pretty sure the Niners saw this on film. I mean, I wasn't studying film, so I obviously didn't see it until afterwards. But I heard what Hassan Reddick was doing in those last few weeks was he wasn't playing the run at all. Almost, he was just rushing the field straight up to go straight to where the quarterback was. So it's almost like we maybe could have just taken advantage and just ran the ball towards the side if he's just going to run up to where the quarterback is and not honor the run game. So it is what it is. It's just one of those things that people say that, Brock Purdy could have climbed the pocket, and hindsight's 2020. It's just one of those freakish things where the dude freaking place his hand on that right part of the elbow to mess his nerve up, and one of those things. And let's talk about this, because people are like saying that, hey, we got to draft a quarterback. I don't think we need to draft a quarterback. Some people say I'm okay with signing a veteran guy. Doesn't have to be a famous guy. But for me, the most important thing is beefing up the O-line. I don't know if you have anybody in mind in terms of drafting a QB or signing somebody, but we could talk a little QB and a little O-line before we close it out.
Yeah, actually, I would love to do both. I would love to sign a cheap veteran option. A lot of it depends on Brock Purdy. I did a show earlier in the week, and I said if Brock Purdy is, has a surgery and they say 6 months, then I'm good with a cheap veteran. If the Brock Purdy surgery goes down and it's a 9-month injury, then we're going to have to pay a little bit more. I want a better veteran quarterback behind Trey, just in case something happens. You step it up a little bit. But I also want to bring in a rookie, because we don't know what the competition committee is going to do as far as adding a third quarterback to be active during games. If they go back to that exemption, then we want to have, a really capable player. And I think you're going to draft somebody that could step in. So I would go veteran. There's names out there, right? Andy Dalton, I've heard. I've also been hearing a lot of other guys as well. Potentially Nate Sudfeld. I'm not against bringing Sudfeld back to be a depth person in this, especially if Purdy and Trey are going to be healthy. But then I do think they should go with a young quarterback, because there are quarterbacks in this draft that have a lot of talent. You've seen people already talking about Haener from Fresno State. He's got some ability. Max Duggan was a guy that I've started liking. I've started watching his film a little bit. I like the athletic ability and some things that he does. So he's a guy that's interesting to me. I think there are some guys, late in this draft, that potentially the 49ers could latch onto, that if they don't make the 53-man roster, no sweat, you put them on the practice squad. And then if something happens, they're your emergency quarterback if the NFL decides to go to those 3 quarterback looks.
That's a great way of putting it. Tommy Huxley in the chat says Ant is the mother flipping goat. Showing Ant some love for 49ers Cutback.
What is you guys up to Tommy?
Tommy's awesome, man. If you guys are not subscribed to 49ers Cutback and you don't know who he is, just first time seeing him, you probably already do know him, but just in case you are, hit the description box of this video. You'll find the link to his YouTube channel and his Twitter as well. Randy Daytona is here. He was saying he got here late, so he freaking missed it. You didn't miss nothing, man. We're still going. We're still talking. Good to have you here. Mariah from 49er Faithful Lead Podcast is somewhere in the chat. I saw her. Where is she at? Here she is right here dropping the bombs. I didn't drop any F-bombs. Her and I always have a little joke, inside joke, because if you ever saw me at 8 points in times during the season where I was frustrated, which happened plenty after we lost to the Eagles. Oh my gosh. If you saw the video with my D'Amico Ryans goes to the Houston Texans, that video was also my Philadelphia Eagles lost rant video as well. I probably dropped every F-bomb known to man in that video. And, if you want a good laugh, go ahead and watch that video. You'll see me making a fool of myself. But Mariah also has her share of F-bombs on her show, 49 Faithfully Podcast, that she runs with TL. They have an excellent duo, and she always has great guests on there. She has great giveaways on there as well. But yeah, man, the quarterback position, it's definitely, we're always the most famous, most talked about team in the offseason. And sometimes it's for more bad reasons than good. It's this shaky stability at the cornerback position. And if you talk to Jimmy G fans, they all want Jimmy G to come back and Trey Lance to be traded. But it looks like Trey Lance is going to be in the mix. I'm a huge Trey Lance guy. Again, I was not saying that I was buying into the hype saying, hey, he's going to be Patrick Mahomes right off the bat. But what I was saying is this kid has a ton of potential. Let him, get his kinks out, because we're going to see plenty of wow plays, and we may see some mistakes along the way, but I think he'll make up for it with his wow, big highlight plays, and it's going to be a whole lot of fun to watch with all the playmakers we have. And this was way before we even picked up CMC. So, Purdy then had that amazing playoff run. Unfortunately, he got hurt, and now it looks like Lance has a second chance, so we'll see how that goes. But again, I do want some competition for Lance. For me, I was telling people I want, if it's going to be a competition between Purdy and Lance, I'm totally for it, and if Purdy beats out Lance, I'm fine. That means Purdy's the guy. I'm just afraid that I don't want to see a flash in the pan type Nick Foles situation. That's all.
Yeah, I think, with the whole quarterback situation, I was firmly behind Trey Lance going into last season. I thought that was the expectation. He was going to learn from Jimmy, and then he was going to take over. And I was out there every day at training camp, and I thought there were, moments he looked great and moments he didn't. But I thought that was pretty consistent with every quarterback that was there. And the 49ers defense was no joke. I mean, they were out there playing at a high level. I don't get into how many incompletions he's thrown at training camp and all that. I just thought he looked good. He made plays. He was far advanced from what I had seen from his rookie season. And I don't think we got to see the entire Trey Lance, that we thought we were going to see, because his season was cut short. Then, of course, Chicago, just a nasty game overall. I don't know exactly who Trey Lance is. I really don't, because we just haven't seen it. I think we know what he could be, what we want him to be. I think we do have a better idea of what Brock Purdy is. And I think that's one of the things that Kyle's going to have to decide. The good thing for Trey is he has the entire offseason OTAs, probably all of training camp as well, to show them that he's the guy again and he's ready to start. And I think that if he comes in the way I know he will, because he's an intelligent guy, he's a smart guy, and he works harder than almost anybody, he'll be ready for this situation and this opportunity. The question will be, what will happen if he gets into the first game or the second game and it starts going the wrong way and Brock Purdy is ready to go at that point? Will they pull the trigger on switching early? That's my only concern about this whole thing. I do think it's going to be Trey to start the season and Brock coming in, but I wonder what happens to Trey if they do have to pull the trigger and switch to Brock Purdy.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. It might get ugly too, but who knows? I mean, at the end of the day, I just want what's best for the team, even though I am a huge Trey Lance supporter, because I love his ceiling and I just love the guy's personality, love his attitude, and love his story and everything that goes along with him. But at the end of the day, the best man win. That's how I look at it. Worowski says Nick Foles was not a rookie. Purdy did. That's a rookie. Good point. There was also, I want to say what's up to David McNiner. I call him MC Niner sometimes. Good to have you here, bro. Yeah, so there's a couple of guys like that we could probably sign, Jarrett Stidham, or a guy like Gardner Minshew, guys on the cheap. I wouldn't mind having them in the mix. Joey Mahoney was mentioning Marcus Mariota in the chat. So there's all different kinds of guys we could possibly sign. And then you say we could draft somebody, some rookie, all that. I just want, if Brock isn't going to be healthy early on, sure, bring in some other guys. Let's have some competition going on. And, and Trey Lance himself said he didn't want to be handed anything. He wanted to work for it. He wanted to compete. So, but at the end of the day, you know, people are worried about, oh wow, well, we got to have 5 quarterbacks that are good on this roster. You know, I don't think it's that severe. I mean, what happened was pretty fluky, but I do think what's really, really important is the offensive line. And, you know, McGlinchey's on the block in terms of free agency, and there's guys coming out in the draft. There's guys that we could possibly sign in free agency. So what's your take? Is Brendo's a free agent too, right? So what are you thinking about the O-line now? Who we could possibly get, or what we should do?
Yeah, I think this is the one that's good. This is the position that gets interesting because the 49ers have kind of always spent money at certain positions. First off, they spent money at left tackle, which we have the best left tackle in football, so that's a done deal. But then they've spent money at center. It's always been something they did, right? Since Kyle Shanahan got there, it was Weston Richburg, then it was Alex Mack. Like they were bringing guys in and paying them money. Last year, I fully think they thought that it was going to be Alex Mack again. They signed him to a 3-year deal. They expected to be Mack. When Mack decided to retire, it threw everything into a little bit of flux. They went with Jake Brendel, and Brendel, he performed better than I think most expected him to because he equipped himself and handled himself, you know, and got it done. He did good enough, which is great. I think when it comes to McGlinchey, the problem is he's about to get like Tomlinson money, Laken Tomlinson money, and I know he's really good as far as run blocking. I just don't think the 49ers can afford to pay Mike McGlinchey $15 million to play right tackle. Not so much because of Mike McGlinchey, but because of the way they value their offensive line. Their value is left tackle, center, than right tackle. So you just can't do it. So they'd be more inclined to pay a center than they would a tackle. So then it gets interesting. Is it going to be Colton McKivitz playing right tackle? If they decide that Colton McKivitz is ready to go and it's not Colton and it's not going to be Mike McGlinchey and they feel comfortable with McKivitz, a guy that they, when drafted, thought was going to be the starting left tackle until they traded for Trent Williams, then you're good to go, right? We've seen them already develop. Chris Verster's developed Aaron Banks, Spencer Burford, Jake Brendel. You got to feel comfortable with the way he develops players. So if they do that, I'm there. The problem is there's guys like McGarry out there who are really, really good, who are better pass blockers than Mike McGlinchey, but maybe cheaper. If you could possibly upgrade right tackle with McGarry while also not losing anything in the run game, you have to feel like that's a win-win situation. So maybe the 49ers pivot, save, $3, $4, $5 million and go McGarry, or they just throw everything out and just say, you know what, we feel comfortable with Colton McKivitz. Either way, I'm not going to complain because I trust Chris Foerster because of the way that he's built the offensive line since he took over a couple years ago.
Great way of putting it. And there are some a lot of offensive linemen obviously coming out in the draft. Some names that I was, another free agent guy that people, a lot of Niner, before I talk about the draft, a lot of people are bringing up Taylor Lewan. I see that name popping up like crazy now because he got released. And the knock on him is that he's been hurt. People are saying that, I don't know if he voiced it, but he's left tackle. I guess people are just assuming that he wouldn't really be willing to go to right tackle because obviously it's a pay cut if you go to right tackle too. Any thoughts about that guy?
Yeah, so, in a perfect world, Taylor Lewan would say, yeah, I'll come to San Francisco, play right tackle. And I know he loves Trent Williams and the way Williams plays, but yeah, when he was asked about it, he said that there were like 31 teams were going to call you. And he said, no, 30 because the 49ers already have a left tackle. So I think he was making it clear that he wants to play left tackle. The question will be, with all the injury concerns, he's missed almost 2 full seasons in the last 3 years because of an ACL. Would he at some point look at the 49ers and go, you know what, I'll flip the script and go to the other side? I don't know if that's possible. I lean towards putting that at way down the list of possibilities after his recent comments. So I don't think Taylor Lewan's a legitimate option for the 49ers, but if he was willing to go to right tackle, I would 100% be behind that.
Me too. I'd totally take that. We have to find out if these guys want to play for the Niners, if they want to come to California, whereas, a lot of these teams players come from states where it's a lot cheaper to live out where they live, in comparison to the Bay Area. So we'll see who wants to come out and be a Niner. But that guy you mentioned from the Falcons, that'd be a nice little option. There's some guys coming out of the draft. I don't know if they're going to be starter material where we're drafting third and fifth round, like Blake Freeland's one of them. Taylor Mock is another guy. So who knows? I'm actually okay with if the 49ers try to draft a center. You mentioned Brendel. Brendel did exceed our expectations, but at the end of the day, he is still a bit of an overachiever. So who knows if we upgrade from center and right tackle. I'm hoping we do. What scares me about McKivitz is that he's been on the roster all this time, and just by default, I tell myself, well, if he's just as good as McGlinchey, if not better, why wasn't he playing, you know? But then again, Banks didn't play, and then Banks stepped right in for Tomlinson too, right? Banks looked pretty damn good. So just want to say what's up to Vince Felix. Welcome to the channel. Never seen you before. He said 49ers average 30-plus points with Brock Purdy under center. Can Trey actually top that? Tough. We don't know yet, but hey, there's only one way to find out, and Trey has all the upside in the world to do so. So, you know, he may get a shot, and we may find out. And if he doesn't, you know, I guess Purdy's the guy. But hopefully Purdy recovers properly from his injury too. So we'll see how that goes. So it's a big question mark for both of them, in my opinion. Nothing's set in stone for any of the quarterbacks right now. So just it is what it is. Joey says a lot of good centers available in free agency this year. Connor McGovern, Garrett Bradbury, Bradley Bozeman. Any thoughts on those guys?
Yeah, Connor McGovern is probably going to be one of the number one guys, especially since, you know, he fits in the system. He's already played in the system. He understands what the responsibilities are. He played for John Benton, the former 49ers offensive line coach. So it's going to be taught really, really close to what Chris Forrester teaches. I just don't know if they're going to want to pay top dollar for a center. They have proven they would in the past. They've done it with, you know, I didn't think they were going to pay a big-time cornerback. They did with Charvarius Ward last year. So it is on brand for the 49ers to pay at center over right tackle. So that would make sense if they decide to go that way. Maybe go with a Connor McGovern at center, high price, and then go with a cheaper option at right tackle. That could be the case. I mean, there is a real possibility. I don't know if 49er fans want to hear this. There is a real possibility the line could be Nick Zakelj at center with Banks and Burford at guard, and, you know, McKivitz and Trent Williams at the tackles. That is an actual possibility. Wouldn't have thought so, you know, 6 months ago, but it is that possibility now.
Especially when we've been hearing that name thrown out lately too, Nick Zakelj. Like, that guy didn't even get on the field. Like, you know, there's all this uncertainty, but at the end of the day, you know, the coaches do know things that we don't know. So if the coaches are in Kyle's ear, and Kyle saw certain things that the coaches saw, who knows? Maybe those guys get their shot and they surprise us. Steve, somebody mentioned who was a Niner sickness. Mentioned Tayshaun Gibson. I'd love to bring him back. I think he'd be nice. Are you okay with bringing him back?
Yeah, I think that's a must. I think when it comes to the safety position, Jimmy Ward's going to leave, so you have to bring back Tayshaun Gibson, and then you have to figure out, you know, drafting someone in this draft. No matter where it's at, 3rd to 6th round, you know, pick up somebody and start developing them. And then they also have a guy that I'm sure we'll hear a little bit about during the offseason, especially when you get into training camp, is Taylor Hawkins. So you have him on a futures contract right now. He was out of San Diego State last year. He impressed me early on watching his film, and then at training camp, he did the same thing. So I think he's somebody to watch as well as a depth piece this year, and then let's see what he can become in the next couple of years.
So was Taylor Hawkins injured and we couldn't use him? I don't remember that guy.
He was on the practice squad, so he did not make the initial 53-man. They put him on the practice squad. Same with Quantrez Knight, who was a nickel cornerback. Yeah, those guys are guys that have a lot of promise. We'll see if they're, you know, an Emmanuel Mosley or one of those guys that start on the practice squad who are undrafted free agents that end up making an impact. It's hard to do, but there are a couple of guys that have good instincts that are at least somebody to talk about, and they will be good special teams players.
And now with Wilkes as our D coordinator, who some people are saying is a Chris Kocurek of defensive backs, maybe we possibly get to see these guys come out of their shell, and we still have Womack in the mix too, as far as a nickel corner type player to spell Jimmy Ward, assuming Jimmy Ward's going to leave. But that you know, that's for a whole other show. There's plenty of stuff to talk about with these Niners, and thought we weren't going to have enough stuff to talk about, but there's just so many things that we could cover. It's been over the hour mark. I want to say thank you to everybody that shows up to the chat. If you guys are new to the channel, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. If you guys are faithful viewers, really appreciate you guys. If you're not subscribed to Ant for 49ers Cutback, check out his channel. It's in the description box of this video. It's the 49er Cutback YouTube channel. Subscribe to it, and you can hit him up on Twitter. I put his Twitter link as well. Great having you on, Ant. For the first time, had you on. I'm collabed with you on your channel one time before. Any final thoughts before we go?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Really looking forward to getting with you again before the draft. I think that'll be a lot of fun. And I think, you know, the offseason's about to pick up. Here comes the combine. Here comes free agency. Plenty of content coming everyone's way. So make sure you keep checking in with Bashar over here on 49er Minded. And does a good job. And everyone have a really good rest of your weekend. Maybe watch some XFL. Are people doing that? Are people watching XFL?
I watched a little bit. I was trying to watch it today. I was flipping through the channels. I was like, when's the XFL game going to be on? And maybe I didn't have the channel. So I was like, all right, whatever. Maybe I'll catch a highlight. I heard Peter Tamapinu had was it a pick six or something like that? Or he had a defensive touchdown, former Niner. So I'll look that up.
Yeah, there's a couple exciting players here and there. I've been watching the highlights on YouTube. I did watch a little bit of the game today. It was kind of nasty and rainy. So yeah.
Again, thank you guys in the chat. Bebop, I see he's got one of the coolest name, Bebop Jones. So what's up, Bashar? You're kind of late, but you can always hit that rewind button. Thank you guys. Thank you, Ann. It's been awesome having you on. Thank you guys in the chat. Thank you everybody for watching 49er Minded, where we get into the minds of 49er fans. Keep watching those 49ers and stay 49er minded. Peace. Go Niners.
Come on, 49er fans, let's get it.
Because it's 49er mind.
We gotta do this one time for the Empire.
It's 49er mind. It's 49er mind.
We gotta get that brick by brick done quick.
49er mind.
Yeah. Yo, we can't listen to them haters, man.
49er mind.
We from the Bay.
49er mind.
We them San Francisco 49ers.
49er mind.
We got that red and gold blood inside us.
49er mind.